Yep, so welcome back to that part 2 that I mentioned I would be leaving in part 2 of When Drawings Go Wrong, number 1, with our figure here, Elysia. Something happened this morning. Something semi-inspirational. Let me explain. First of all, let's straighten out our figure here a bit. Let's get that page a little bit more head-on. There we go. Now, our figure in question here is, as mentioned in the last video, is Elysia, a ex-lover of the original Marvel Universe Captain Marvel, Marvel. Also progenitor of his offspring of genus and phyla. This particular rendition is utilizing the original costume, which is ultimately a black tight, or it could be a leather, red cape, and with those pom-pom-like pigtails that they decided to do the character up in those days. And that is a phyla with her two griffins, a hawk-like, giant hawk-like, part lion-bodied, winged creatures. Now, I found myself stopping midway through last video to say, it wasn't going well and I needed to pull away from it, and so I decided to interrupt the video right there. I thought perhaps at that point I was just going to go move on with some other things for an up-and-coming project. Kind of get away from it and then come back to it. I didn't really know how I felt about this. The main problem being one that is rather obvious to see. And what that is I'll just flat out say it before windbagging, is just the offset position of the head at the top there. And what I was going for there was like kind of an arc, a slight arc that would lead to a head leaning to one side. But in doing that, somehow in the original pencil sketch that I had laid down, I wasn't paying attention really to the head position itself. And as I was working through the pencils, one of the things I did do with the head itself was I scaled it down a bit because it looked a little large. Something wasn't quite right. But in doing that, I failed to see the actual position. Now, this was still in the pencil stage. But then something happened right in here. I quickly realized that the contours in the hip and the waist and the breast area were all okay, exactly where I wanted them to be. This was going to work. And what I did, I would think, in a way, kind of foolishly, was rush in with the inks to just establish those lines. What I've been doing lately is been getting into this, probably a bad habit. It's definitely dangerous. Bad things can happen when you do this. What that is like as I'm penciling in the first initial sketch, I'll start laying down inks before the sketch itself is completed. And why that is dangerous for me, I can explain. And I can explain what happened here, what ended up happening here. So seeing this, I put a solid contour in, started putting in the inks, getting them, let's just get these inks in, right? And I didn't complete it, but I put in a lot of heavy stuff, right? And at that point, it becomes solid. And then I went up to the head and started tracing the cheek. Oh, let's get in the poofs of hair and position that. And then, the cape draped over the shoulders. Let's get that in. And, uh-oh, wait a minute. Right. And then realizing the position was out. And it was a bummer because I'm like, oh my God, I could have easily fixed that backward. Like if I just backed up a bit and redid this and laid it across and got it in position, it would have been fine. But the thing about laying in your inks or getting carried away when something's going really well in one area, it distracts your attention from the thing that right now, as I look at it, stands out like a sore thumb. Now, why wasn't I seeing that? Well, I don't know. Could it have something to do with what was going on in here? Wow, this is really great. And, right? Only to lift the pen and lift the eye back up and go, whoa, no. What happened, right? So, initially, I got to a point where, I'm going to have to pull away from this. There were two things that were happening, too. I started roughing out the feather work on the griffins' heads and stuff, but I was just using this wasn't pencil drawn. As you can see, they're still not quite penciled in. And I started using a 01 in there to just start putting in the finer feathers. Now, that was a problem, and I'll explain why. Basically, with using the 01 fine liner to just start drawing, I realized if I didn't stop, as I mentioned before, I would end up just going nuts with that marker and trying to draw out the whole thing with a marker, which is even a worse idea than the previous one I mentioned. So I didn't want to do that, and plus I was frustrated and getting upset with the dilemma I had concerning this head position and stuff. It wasn't that bad. I thought, well, how can I make it work? Because it would be a terrible waste. Because I'm thinking, well, it's decent. Oh God, it would. Sometimes you have to face the truth that you're better off to just start again. And I think, in a way, I can honestly say that's probably the best idea. But then something hit me this morning. And it inspired me to think things over. And that leads into a different topic altogether, which I'll save for the end of the video after I, make an attempt to salvage this drawing. I'll give you a hint as to what I'm up to, and I will certainly be open with you and tell you exactly what I did to fix this, if it is, in fact, salvageable. I can't predict this so far. I think I might be able to get away with something here, but we'll see. Okay. As far as giving you a hint of what this is, I'll just put it this way. I'm going to pretend, here it is. Let's say it's 1971, we'll say. And this fucking thing is due this evening. It's got to be on the presses. Got a problem here. Now, it's been discussed, different techniques that were used, before the advent of computers, before even zipatones and things like that they were experimenting with. That in advertising and commercial art, these things were incorporated. Some of these things that, a couple of them that are criticized and questioned, I'm not going to mention at this point usually by who or whom, because that's irrelevant. What is relevant is that I have a situation here. Here you are, here we are, in La La Land, and we're pretending we're the jobber on a project like this. What do we do? What do we do? You're already worried about it. You don't know what can be done. Do you have the time? Well, quite personally, I could take this and take all the time in the world with it. For example, I could break it all back down, crumple this up, and start again, render generally the same drawing, and start again, making sure to consider both things here, and like all the time in the world, in a sense. But we're not going to do that. Trying to develop a new attitude when it comes to time as well. Now, initially, as someone aspiring to become a comic book artist and you're trying to get your fundamentals down, and I'm still trying to work out some of my bugs, you shouldn't be worried about time. But I'm starting to scrap that idea. And I'm going to pretend I don't have the time to do it. And I'm going to put myself in a jobbing situation here and say, you're in a situation, there's a fire under your ass, what are you going to do to make this work? So hang in there with me. Because in this, putting this, some would say unnecessary pressure on myself, or someone doing it, putting the pressure on themselves to rush, to save time and all that when they really don't have to, might seem detrimental. And why would you do that? Truth is, I think there might be something precious and beneficial to that type of pressure. That the working under pressure, that the speed and the things you may learn along the way under those conditions, physically and mentally, are what propel the artist to develop faster. And since I'm not in that jobbing position at the moment to do it that way, I do have the option to go about it drill sergeant method and do what some of us are willing to do, some of us are not willing to do, and that is push myself. Okay. So, picking up, let's see. I want to indicate a few things here if you can make them out. You'll notice I've penciled in some arrows on this shoulder, above the head, and at 2 points on this face. Okay? Pencil indications of arrows pointing in a certain direction. Some of you may have figured out what I'm going to be doing there, what's happening there. The arrows would certainly indicate the issue at hand. But enough of that for now. Anyway, as I mentioned, I had to get the penciling down of these griffins. Now, this one, to give you a hint about what's going on here, this one here, I did some light work on it to indicate, but that's going to be ignored for now, this wing, until I straighten this out. But I went ahead with this one, putting in the 3 basic sections of the wing to get a pattern going. And what I've decided to do is, with the wing overhanging the beast here, the light source coming from an angle above, whatever, there's going to be some deep shade on the body here. And there'll probably be some more here, just under the neck, and possibly along the rib cage and the belly here. So I'll be blacking out areas after that penciling's done. Potentially there may be some black areas under the bottom of the mane. I guess you'd call it a mane, I don't know. On a griffin, on this griffin, right? Even though this is going to be feathers, right? They basically have, well, I mean, if they have a lion's body, I guess you can call the hawk, the feathered portion of the head, the mane. Because you'll notice on them, it only goes to a certain point, and then it's followed up by, you know, normal lion's body that's made up of short fur. So we're going to get the wing in there, that figured out and penciled in straight, and deal with this. Deal with this. It's going to be a radical way, but what can I say? To be straightforward about this, it's not her fault, but somebody's got to pay the price. Off with her head. Reading me so far? Good. It's a shame, I know. But let's consider what's been done here. Yeah, as you can see, did a full shift, including this fist and arm, and the head, over to where it should be. As you can see the gape and gap there of where it once was, to give you an idea of how dramatic a shift it was. But now the position works. Now some of the prices that were paid was that this cape portion, which also was trimmed out or cut out with the arm and the head and the bushy hair, right, is now covering the top portion of this breast. So you hot niggers out there, remember, it's not all about you. Anyway, now this strap I did not cut out, and the strap is actually the one that is attached to these this griffin in the front portion. But you'll also notice that there are bands representing folds in the cape, which is right behind her. Well, what am I going to do in this case with the band? The band has to be let out of the fist in such a way to give a sense of tension. When I first put this in position, the band was off a bit, and I realized I would have to do like a C shape leading to it. So I'm going to instead incorporate this band into the make it a fourth fold in the cape that's behind her. I'm going to go with that and create a new band. We'll either just draw one in, but I thought about this later, that the harnessing should go more back towards the I don't know, I thought it would be better towards the base of the neck. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do. Now, other areas where this suffered, well, as you can see, or maybe you don't know, I ended up trimming away some of the poof, some of the puff of those massive curly pigtails. And so I lost a lot of that mass, but they were too big to begin with, and they weren't very rounded. In a way, I'd be better off if this portion of it that extends up under the chin and goes wild here away from the poof wasn't there. But to do that, I'd be whiting out. Okay? I'm not going to white out. If I do anything, I'll actually cut out strands of where the cape meets here in white paper and actually paste them on, because I plan on coloring this, and I plan on doing most of that without photocopying this image. Now the point is, though, that you need to remember that in that scenario that was created, the jobber and the deadline has to be due tonight. Either you can start the new drawing or make the corrections. When it comes to that, remember that when it's still a pen and ink drawing and you've just got your blacks and whites, Any thing like whiteout or liquid paper or some sort of opaquing paint to, just go over and touch up anything, try and get everything perfect the way you want it before photocopying is just fine, okay? But when you're not doing that, understand that you can't make those corrections and then apply stationary colors over top of it. Oh my, it just looks like hell. Anyone who's tried that as a kid knows this. It's just horrible. You can't do it. But any of these alterations I make that end up being in the black and white from here on in, after I make the photocopy over it, that's just fine. Because your imagery will be all either the black or the white. You won't get things like, I don't know, paper flaw, paper fold, the tracings of opaque paint. They will only come up as plain white, as plain as the sheet of paper you're using in the in either not scanning, but I would say if you're doing laser prints or just straight Xeroxes, that sort of thing. So that's all well and good for that purpose of the jobber's dilemma, okay? For me, I just wanted to get the position over. And I've been looking at this and thinking about this, and what I would have to do is, because of the shift in the figure and in the head region, as well as the fist here and part of the cape, and the displacement leaves hollows in the paper. So I think the correct thing to do is just to put another piece of equal quality paper underneath, so that any of the gapping underneath will be covered by that paper. Because what I planned, and I got to do this carefully, and I got to be careful with the gluing so that it doesn't seep into the edges of any of this and come out the other side. Because what I intend on doing is that when I finish this in, right, and when we get the wing roughed in and then inked and stuff, I'm going to be taking my pen very carefully and connecting these, through the drawing itself. And I can't have it sticking out or anything, or throwing the pen nib off or anything. So it's very delicate work, but it can be done. And as I said, when you have that black and white image and you press it down, right, on your photo face, it's going to be fine. It's going to come up your blacks and whites and nothing else. So ideally that will be taken care of. Also, I just made the shift and decided to film again here. But obviously, when I look around these regions, everywhere the section of the head and the torso meet, every section there has to be analyzed. You have to look and fill in anything that might be filled in. In this case, we're lucky. Some of the stuff you can do with that hair there, it can be stretched into the various areas where it makes contact with the shoulders or the background here, that sort of thing. That's a good thing. But I'm thinking, but again, that portion of the strap for the griffins is going to be incorporated into another fold of the cape, and as another black, a solid black in there. Maybe we'll do another line for the outer edge. That's not a big deal. That is certainly not a concern. But this is a big relief here, because I was afraid, I don't know if I could do this. But I wasn't really, I was thinking more of the drawing itself and not what would be possible in that working scenario. With just a photocopy, for Christ's sake. These things can be done. Anyway, there's more to be said about that, but I'm going to move on, get the paper behind there, get us tacked down. As you can see, there's a roughing out of the wing there. I want to put in broad blacks in there with highlights, where this portion here will probably be shaded in. right? Blacks, and you'll get the highlights of the edges of the feathers, right? Because it's, if you look, the wing is draped. It looks, it appears to be draped over it, right? So definitely want to get that effect in there. And the blacks will be good because I think a lot of the background, well, I mean, between the white that's left over in the background and the redness of her cape, the blacks in front of that shouldn't be a problem. Now, she's, being a black, she represents a dark area against that red cape. So it's kind of like, when it comes to your contrast, she's going to be one unit. And in a way, what you'll be getting is like a modulation between deep blacks and a dark red to these, in reference to these outer figures. Should be okay, could work, and right now it looks like I will be able to not only salvage it, but use it in the project itself. And that's good because I want to move on to, let's see. Yeah, there's another figure I want to put in there too for that up and coming. And that's going to be a Marvel in his original infantry gear before leaving the military, that kind of thing, as a captain, as a soldier. Yeah. But we'll get Elysia done first and get her up there. I had thought about doing her in the other costume as well, but no, there's no point, because in the telling of that story where she meets with the Griffins and Captain Marvel is confronted and all that, and they become connected, that's the original. So we're going to go with that. Okay? Moving on. Ooh. 3D element. No, we're not going for that here. So we got the sheet behind us. We've taken our pencil and indicated the spaces and gaps where the overlying image lies on the background paper, if you get my meaning. And I've put tiny little pencil arrows drawn directly onto that back paper to show where the pasting the line in which the pasting should be behind, because I don't want it seeping up into the foreground image. That would screw up the coloring process, which isn't really a coloring process. I'm going to be using stationery again. Pretty sure of that, because I'm not going to photocopy this and stuff and try and, you know what I mean? There's no need to demonstrate what I'm trying to do here. But in that scenario, again, that I brought up, that's exactly what would happen. I'd flatten it out and get the image completed in its black and white and photocopy it. Take that image and then and that would be the one sent to the colorist or printing. Now, at this stage, we simply want to tack the contour onto the background page. And then what we want to, anyway, getting back to it, what we really need to do here is get that tacked and take a look around the perimeter of the contours of the drawing, the outlining basically, and look. One of the things that I didn't mention in the last stage is that when the cutting process began, you have to go back to the area in which the portion that you cut out is cut out from, and make sure you don't have any trace of the black from the outline on those areas, because they're still going to be sitting there, right? And if you're not going to be whiting them out, which we're not going to be doing for photocopying, you cut them out, because the purpose of the background paper here is to, provide new surface to either be just that, the background, or provide you with new medium to, etch out any last details of the figure. I think you get where I'm going with that. Okay, got to get to it. Oh, and besides that, not only did I remove those, those scritches and scratches along the contours, along the outline of the figure, but also using an eraser got rid of the pencil indication marks while I was at it. That's why they're no longer there. Okay. That's how you do it. See, now we got the background tack in there. And there's the edges of it. You might be able to pick up here on camera, right? That sort of thing. Now, here's the other thing too. Since we got to delicately work around this within the figure and outside the edge, anything corresponding to the background, like the part of this wing that'll have to be redrawn here, and this implemented, and the detailing of the other strap, and finishing off the folds in the cape up to the top, that kind of thing. All of that stuff has to be done while the paper's in this situation. And what the thing is, now that it's tacked at certain points with the glue, which I might add, hold on a second. Wait a fucking minute. Okay. I noticed something here. Hold on. Did you notice it too? Wait a minute. Anyway, let me just finish the statement and then I'll go back and remedy this if I can. Yeah, the point is, the complete, like a lot of it, the paper's going to be loose around the edges, so you got to be very careful so that you don't crumple it, fold it, nick it, that kind of thing, because it'll pop up, right? And you want to keep it basically flat as you're working with it, after you're working with it, and as you're working around it. So you got to be careful there. But now I got to get back to this other issue. Maybe you've noticed it too. Hold on. Okay. Yeah, I just want to focus in on that. Take some time. Oh, wait a minute. This is... the angle's off, for one thing. I want this to be as straight on. Oh, wait a minute. That's got to come out like that a bit. That's right. Now, yeah, that's pretty much straight on. So, it's important to just look at it for a bit there. I don't know if you realized this, but at the end of the chin of her, I put in some more black on the contour that, underneath the chin, it's all shadowed out like that, right? Well, there was a reason I did that. I didn't like the extension of her jaw. I thought she was a bit too jaw-y kind of thing. So I shrunk that up a bit. But I think there's a minor detraction in that. But something we can definitely get away with. It had me worried there for a second. Basically, what it ends up doing is it promotes a definite idea of what could you call it? I would have to, hold on a second, let me figure that one out. Yeah, it's definitely making her cup size the impression of them being increased as, yeah, it's making her look bigger there. Now, everything's good there. It's kind of a shapely, voluptuous body type, that sort of thing. So it all works there. But in reducing the chin in this particular head, it increases that a bit. I know that'll please some people, but that's not what I'm. That's not what I'm. That wasn't my goal here, and it doesn't necessarily please me. I would, it's fine. We got the position in. She's still got a curve to one side of her head. It would be nice if I could show the neck stretching from the top of like the collarbone area. That would really help, but that ain't gonna happen in this. But it is salvaged, and I'm happy with it that way. But hey, what can I say? What you're looking at is an idea of my first paste up. That sort of thing. It's not the ideal. It's certainly something not to be recommended. But I thought, yeah, I just got that idea that, well, what would you do if you had to? And it's 1970, and there is no, these other tools to. You don't have them. You can't utilize this technology to save your ass here, and you're gonna have to repeat this, and or what do you do? And it just dawned on me, so I'm going with it. Moving along, getting into the solid black shadows. Shadow on the back of the one griffin in the foreground, created by the wing above. Shadow below the chin and the front center portion of the, I don't know what you call it, like I said, the mane of the feathers where they meet the body, down and under the chest. Yeah, a few things left to do. I'm going to structure out the leg. The rest of the thicker feathers of the mane in the foreground griffin, and finish up the wing in the background, and that should just about do it, unless I'm going to throw in some sort of cheesy background. Probably not, though. I'm thinking I'll just throw in some cheesy color instead or something, because for these purposes that it's not important to cell location. Although it is an alien world, this pick is basically evolving out of. So, but whatever. I'm just more concerned with those two figures, and I'm just awfully happy we could manage to somewhat salvage this in our paste-up attempt. There were some sacrifices made, but nothing too major. Moving on. Well, this is where the labor really starts. Pretty much know what to do here, but got to embellish these feathers with some blacks, like the way we did here, just under each individual feather. Some shadow licked in there, and complete some of the detailing on the top of the wing here, and that should pretty much wrap it up for this griffin in the front. Some splash, some shadows here and here to give weight to the body parts. And then we'll finish up with these wings. Make them a little less detailed. This one's further back. It's even behind her as a third shadow. Don't want to ham it up too much, but don't want to go crazy with detail, detracting from the center of the drawing here. So we're going to put that in. Accuracy we'll go for, but not too much detail. Then that griffin's pretty much done. And then, oh yeah, and of course, don't forget the detailing on the ears. And then it'll be, an overall once over just to take it in and add any little points. I'm starting to obsess over it. That's when I start getting annoyed here. I'm going to have to pull off of it for a bit. Get something on the go for dinner and whatnot, and return to it in a bit. Well, that just about wraps up the griffins. And if I never have to draw another frickin' feather again in my life, well, or anytime soon, that's just fine with me. Actually, that it actually reminds me that I should be referencing some stuff and taking a look at some things, exploring animal bodies and wings, and how light hits a pelt or a cluster of feathers, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm happy that I managed to salvage Elysia for our purposes. Resorted to a paste up and some background paper. And you'll notice the hole punched, or the holes, or hole punched holes, are filled in too. There's one within the griffin's feathers, a large chunk of the black there. There was one up towards the back, the griffin in the background, its wing that's off camera, so to speak. Yeah. And the other one's up top, and that doesn't really count, so I don't really care. That'll probably be cut off anyway, now that the drawing's complete. But you know what I really want to say about this? As I'm okay with it. I'm pretty good with it. Pleased, whatever. Didn't do that too much of a final overview or something. Maybe I could nitpick it. But you know what, Elysia? I'm sick of looking at you, baby. And I need you and your two boys to get the fuck out of here. See you next time.